It is not impossible to build a nomad capitalist plan that works for an entire family, but it is more difficult than a plan that works for a single nomad capitalist. In today's video, I'm going to tell you how to build a plan that works for an entire family so that everyone feels like they're better off because each person is going where he or she is treated best. My name is Joshua Sheats, founder of Radical Personal Finance, here today for Nomad Capitalist, where Andrew Henderson and his team help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs legally go where you're treated best. As I have worked on my own family's Nomad Capitalist plan over the last few years, and as I have consulted with dozens of families who are building their own plans to go where they're treated best, I have learned some secrets as to how you build a plan successfully. And by successfully here, I mean a plan that will hold together over the years. See, a single nomad capitalist has a relatively simple and easy project. It may not seem that way to you if you're still working on figuring out the appropriate details, but I promise you it's actually pretty easy. You just start going where you're treated best. You get on an airplane and you go check out a place. If you decide, hey, maybe I would like to become a digital nomad and go and work from a warmer climate, all you have to do is buy a plane ticket and go. And if you decide, no, I don't indeed actually like working from the beaches of Costa Rica, I might actually want to go and live in a ski town, you simply buy another plane ticket, pack your bag and go. It's relatively simple. But when you are part of a family of nomad capitalists, it's more complicated because now you need to bring multiple people onto the same page so that your plan will continue to stand the test of time and everyone will continue to be happy. And I want to share with you how to do it. The first step is commit yourself to thinking either win-win or no deal. Win-win or no deal. Now here, of course, I'm alluding to the classic principle from Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Principle number 4, where he talks about always planning to have a win-win deal or no deal at all. See, if we come to a negotiation or some kind of agreement or accord, and one of us walks away feeling like there's been a loser in the negotiation or agreement, we will not have an agreement that will stand the test of time. If you and I agree on something and you feel that you lose and I win, you're going to be unhappy. If we agree on something and I feel like I lose and you win, we're going to be unhappy. A successful agreement is one in which we commit ourselves to finding a win-win solution where we both walk away feeling like we're both better off because of the decisions that we have made. If we don't do that, we should stick with no deal, meaning we're not going to change anything until we can build this win-win solution. And if you're going to embark upon a different journey, a nomad capitalist journey, you're going to want to commit yourself to the same mindset. My wife and I live as nomad capitalists. But we have to both believe that we're getting something better from our nomad capitalist journey than from our more typical journey, or we won't continue. Let me give you a couple of examples. A number of years ago, we began our nomadic living experiment by moving into an RV and traveling around the United States. At the time, we had 3 young children. Our eldest was 4 or 5 when we embarked upon that trip. And we did what we felt we needed to do to be comfortable. We bought a large enough RV that was comfortable enough for our purposes, and we thought that everything was going to be great. We really enjoyed our time on the road, but as the months went by, I was enjoying it more than my wife was. And here's why. I was still working, and so I was going away during the day a lot of times to work, sit on my computer and earn the money that we needed to live. but she was caring for 3 young children. But caring for 3 young children in an RV is more difficult than caring for 3 young children in a house. Our children were not yet of the age in which she could open the door and shoo them out and say, go ride your bicycles around the campground. Rather, she needed to supervise them. And it was day by day becoming more and more frustrating for her. So I was enjoying it more than she was. She was feeling like, this is kind of a losing deal for me. I was feeling like it was a winning deal. So it wasn't going to work long term. Well, we put an end to that trip and we built a new plan. At the time, we chose to leave the United States, move abroad. And we did that for birth tourism, but along the way, we went back and tried to figure out how can we build a plan in which we both feel like we're winning. And so moving abroad brought us some more opportunities. By moving abroad, I was able to move our family back into a house so that she would have the space that would help her to care for the children, room for extra toys, extra books, extra playground outside. I was also able, by going abroad and lowering our overall expenses, I was able to hire more help that helped her to have a less stressful daily life. We were able to hire more domestic help because by reducing taxes, I had money freed up that I could use to pay a housekeeper, pay for a nanny to come into the house so that she would have more time. But yet I was also feeling like I was winning because, of course, we're living a shared adventure together, but we're lowering our overall cost of living. We're working towards citizenship, building new plans for the future. And so we built a new deal that was a much better solution because it was a win-win deal. And that's kept our family united, and it has resulted in the fact that we're still together. Now we're nomads again, and it's still a commitment that we have that we're going to keep it win-win. And if at some point in time it's not win-win, then it's going to be no deal. So how do you get there? How do you actually put in place the steps needed? I'm going to give you 3 suggestions to help you build a win-win deal. You have to start with the commitment, but here are some steps that may help you. Step number 1 is talk. I know it sounds silly, but you have to talk. You have to share with one another. Here's what I want. Here's what I don't want. Here's what I like. Here's what I don't like. Here's what's working. Here's what's not working. And you have to air those things so that people understand them. And of course, you want to talk in a healthy way where someone's not threatened by sharing their actual opinions. And that takes time to get to. If you're still living your traditional lifestyle, but you think you want to go in another direction, I would encourage you to begin by talking about your long-term goals. One exercise that has been useful for my family, and I would suggest that you try it, is simply make some lists. I encourage couples to separately make a list of 30 things you want to be, 30 things you want to do, and 30 things you want to have before you die. 30 things you want to be, 30 things you want to do, 30 things you want to have before you die. And it makes a much more interesting date night when each of you bring your lists and you talk them through than if you're just trying to talk about whatever comes to mind at the moment. Make lists of what you want. Talk about things. Now, many people have a hard time creating interesting lists because they've had a very limited amount of experience. If my wife has never gone and traveled to a foreign country, if she doesn't have a passport, it's going to be much more difficult for her to conceive of us living in a different country than if we're accustomed to traveling abroad every year for vacation. And so you want to gain experience. There are multiple ways of gaining experience. You can gain experience through personal experience. I frequently have recommended to people, hey, listen, you don't know where you might want to live? Just go travel. Andrew talks about this frequently, working with his clients, where perhaps a family will come in and he'll say, listen, you guys don't yet know where you want to put down roots. Why don't you go and travel for 6 months or a year, visit some different places, see what you like, and then we'll have more certainty in the plan that we create. And so travel is useful. Take a family vacation, but this year, instead of going to Missouri, go to Mexico. This year, instead of going to Europe like you always do, go to the Middle East or go to Asia. Expand your horizons. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to try to start there. Some people are still more limited. So what can you do? Well, I would encourage you, gain experience vicariously through the experiences of others. That could be an invitation. Invite somebody over to your home that recently got back from a trip somewhere. Invite someone over to your home who's worked as an expat somewhere else. If you don't know of anyone personally, use media like we're communicating on right now for you to gain experience from other people. When we first were thinking about going on an RV trip, I had spent more time thinking about that and envisioning it than my wife had. It wasn't that she was opposed to it, but it seemed a little bit far out there, a little bit weird to her. And so one of the things that we did was we found a couple of YouTube channels of young families living in an RV full time. And we started watching them together, enjoying other families' experiences. And after a few months of that, my wife's perspective on the idea changed. It was no longer as weird as it had once been. She realized that, hey, we could probably do this too. That didn't mean it was a good solution, but it meant, hey, we're open to it, we should check it out. You can do this with even travels, right? Frequently, people have no idea what a place is like. If you go to someone who's never been to Hong Kong and say, hey, let's move to Hong Kong, they might be picturing the Hong Kong of 1960. That's very different than the Hong Kong of 2021. And so you might start by watching a travel video, getting an idea of what a place actually looks like. This vicarious experience is very, very valuable. And you want to make sure that you bring it in. At the end of the day, the final tip that I have for you is this. Try it out. At the end of the day, there is no substitute for actually trying something. You think we might want to move to Panama? Then make arrangements to move to Panama and just go do it. A few months of experience in Panama will strip away all of the illusions and show you what it's actually like. What I would recommend to you, though, is don't get too committed until you have enough data. And don't paint yourself into the corner where you believe that changing your plans is a failure. It's not a failure. We didn't fail at RVing. Just because we didn't go for 2 years does not mean that we failed at RVing. We went and we lived in an RV for 6 months. We thoroughly enjoyed it, but it was different than what we had thought. We changed plans. Once we realized we wanted to do something else, we changed plans. Now, I think that both my wife and I at some point in the future want to or would be very happy to move back into an RV. I don't know when we'll do it, but we'll be excited to do it because we know what it's actually like and we know what we liked about it. And we're better off for having tried it. I have not lived in the United States for over 2 years. I don't know whether my family will choose in the future to move back to the United States. We might. But I do know that from having lived abroad, I am much more open to moving back to the United States than I ever was before. Simply taking the steps of going abroad and living abroad has developed within me an appreciation of the situation back home. Trying something and not sticking with it for 20 years is not a failure. So give yourself a lot of permission to simply go and try things. And I promise you, if you'll start doing these things, you'll be committed from the outset to finding a win-win solution that works for everyone in your family. And then systematically think about ideas, brainstorm ideas, try things, gain exposure. Over time, you'll be able to hone in more and more on the appropriate elements of the Nomad Capitalist plan that are right for you. Remember, Nomad Capitalism is not about divorcing yourself from your country. Nomad Capitalism is not about you saying, I have to go and live in Kuala Lumpur. Nomad Capitalism is about going where you're treated best. And you can take parts of your life and move those parts to where they're treated best, and that is a successful plan. And going where you're treated best can look totally different at different stages of your life. So commit yourself to building a plan that works for everyone in your family and use these strategies to help you get there. If you've got comments on what has worked for you in your family to bring everyone on the same page, I'd love to hear you on those. Put those comments down below. If you've got any specific questions on this topic, please put those in the comments and I'll be there answering your questions and listening to your comments.
So people ask, Andrew, how do I get the most out of Nomad Capitalist? How do I begin my Nomad Capitalist journey? The first thing people do is they start right where you're at. They watch YouTube, they listen to podcasts, they read articles at nomadcapitalist.com. We've spent years creating thousands of pieces of free content so that you can get the vibe from someone who's actually done this, from someone who's actually been in your shoes. What they'll do next, they'll get a copy of the book. You can find it on Amazon. It costs a few bucks, and while it's not going to give you all the secrets, it's going to, again, give you more of the vibe. You're going to learn a lot of the things that I've learned. You're going to learn some strategies you can employ, and you're going to get a lot further in your journey. From there, if you are the 7 or 8 figure entrepreneur investor, you can go to nomadcapitalist.com. You can click Become a Client. We're pretty busy these days, but we have availability to help a limited number of people who want to create a holistic plan, something that I think is so important. So if you want to do that, go to nomadcapitalist.com, click Become a Client, learn more about how it works and how we can help you.